Good evening and welcome back to our virtual Dominion Energy Jazz Cafe. Tonight, behind me, whether you've been naughty or nice, I've been a little bit of both, we bring you another jazz concert, courtesy of the Richmond Jazz Society and the Bossa Brazil Jazz Trio. Take it away, fellas.
Good evening and welcome to the VMFA Jazz Cafe. I'm Joe Sarver playing the bass. This would be a good time to introduce the band. To my right is my longtime partner in crime. Welcome to the stage and to this earth, in fact, Mr. Russ Hanchin on guitar. And to my left is, I call him the doctor, Dr. Kevin Gaines on drums. And we're happy to be here with you tonight. We're going to play a mix of Brazilian jazz and some jazz standards. The first tune was written by Carlos Jobim that we played, that's called Favela. The second tune was a jazz standard written by Kurt Weil, and it was called Speak Low. And we'd like to continue on with the Jobim songbook and do another bossa that Carlos Jobim wrote, and it's called Corcovado, or Quiet Nights North of the Border. And now we'd like to, first of all, we'd like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And here's to a COVID-less 2021 on the horizon. But we'd like to do a little song of the season. Just put this one into the repertoire for this gig. I was doing a little song research on it and found out that this tune is actually associated with Henry VIII. It goes back to the 1580s, and allegedly Henry was quite a composer and musician in his own right. This one is called Greensleeves, and we're doing a kind of a Jimmy Smith arrangement of it in a guitar trio. We'd like to continue on. This next tune is a Brazilian bossa, samba, so to speak, written by a good friend of mine who is a a great Brazilian jazz drummer and composer. This song was actually written for his aunt, and it's called Dona Maria. Okay, that was Donna Maria. Now we'd like to play another holiday song. This one I think you will recognize. It was part of the Charlie Brown Christmas. This one's called Christmas Time is Here. Okay, we're going to do one more tune this set. We're going to switch from Vince Guaraldi to the music of Wes Montgomery. This one is a little blues. It's called The Thumb.
right. Bossa Brazil Jazz Trio. I can't wait to hear more of you guys, but I've promised them at home a little conversation. Would you take a break and have a chat?
We'd be happy to take a pause, given that it's the 6th, 17th of December, a pause for the clause.
A pause for the cause. Here we go. Bossa Brazil Jazz Trio, thank you so much for that first set. I think you're bringing us into the holidays in quite a lovely way. Before we get into a conversation, would you take a moment to tell us something about yourselves and about this group that's been playing together for so long?
Well, I'm Joe Sarver, and I'm a native Richmond. I grew up here playing music, and I've played in Richmond all my life. Traveled around, so I'm playing. But I go back a long ways with this gentleman. We met in the 70s and had probably one of the longest running jazz gigs. That was 5-6 nights a week we played. And so that was at Sam Miller's Café, which still exists, but in a different location. But we played together there. Russ left town. I pretty much stayed in town. But gotten back together at various times, and we've been playing together since Russ came back to Richmond for quite a long time.
But all in all, we've been playing literally together since the 70s. And so I tell Joe, I've been in a partnership with him. It's lasted longer than my marriage did. So there you go.
Mine too, but I'm still married.
But,
Married to my first wife.
Well, ain't that an anecdote? Longer than my marriage.
So yeah, we have that history, and then picked up Kevin along the way. I guess we've been working together since probably the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, and done this type of music, and as well as some kind of straight ahead jazz and so forth. But I grew up, I'm primarily a self-taught musician. I have studied music a little bit, but what I know how to do on the bass is pretty much what I have taught myself.
That's sort of my next area of interest is, where does the music begin with you? You're teaching yourself, you begin to play together in the 70s, but you have an upright bass. How did you pick that?
Well, the upright bass was kind of a transitional instrument for me. I started out, as a lot of musicians, as a child playing guitar, but that's an easy question for me to answer because I remember very vividly my dad owned a 67 Ford Galaxy that had, at that time, a state-of-the-art sound system in it. And I used to go out to the car at night because the acoustics were so good in the car and listen to music. Dionne Warwick I was a big fan of Dionne's when I was a kid in the 60s. And her recordings were well recorded and they were arranged by Burt Bacharach and so forth. So I did play a little guitar then, but I really dug the bass and the Bacharach arrangements that Dionne sang, and it was great to listen to him in a perfect acoustical environment inside of a car. And so I knew then that at some point I was going to be a bass player. So I migrated from guitar to electric bass guitar, and then eventually wanted to play jazz and with the straight ahead sound, and that really required upright. Although electric bass is very prevalent in a lot of different forms of jazz.
well, and I started out playing guitar as a teenager, just playing garage bands and rock and roll and that kind of stuff, Beatles and so forth and so on. But then as I was just coming into college, I had an epiphany when I heard, in a short stance of time, I heard Wes Montgomery, I heard Pat Martino, and I heard a 19-year-old George Benson. And the three of them just changed, my view on music and what I wanted to do, and the idea of playing improvised music and such. And I kind of just took a turn at that point. And even though I was in art school, and I graduated here in Richmond from BCU in art, but after that I went on and went up to Boston and went to school at Berklee College of Music for a while, and then came back to Richmond and reconnected with this guy, and then eventually with Kev, and have applying that trade for the longest time.
Now, when you studied, were you studying jazz in college?
Well, you know, I graduated in art here in town, but up at Berklee College of Music, I studied composition and theory mostly.
Yeah, that's as did I.
And everybody had to have a main instrument to do that, and of course I was, you know, a guitar major for that, but I was not a performance major. I was more a harmony theory cat, but you know, it is what you do is you find out, especially since I'm basically self-taught from when I was 12 or 13 years old and such, and then started taking apart Wes Montgomery solos and Pat Martino and George Benson. Then I finally get to Berklee, and I realize when they start, you know, teaching harmony and theory, I realized that's why that worked. You know, my ear already had told me certain things, and I just started confirming how I came to that naturally. So, and then it gave me a springboard, obviously a whole lot more information and a whole lot better players to play with to kind of, you know, move it on and try to improve.
I can echo that. I often tell, I haven't taught in quite some time, but as a teacher, I like to teach music theory. I remember being in high school and my mother telling me that I needed to learn music theory, and I thought she was crazy because I was already fabulous. What did I need with music theory? And I began to study in college, and I realized, oh, I don't know anything about what I'm doing. I can't identify that theory tip. If you don't have it yet, musicians, get you a book or ask one of us. We'll tell you something. Now, along this journey.
This is one thing that I think about, and probably most great musicians would agree to this, but you know, the longer you play music, and I know it's true for me, but the less I think I know about it. And I think a lot of musicians feel that way, you know, because you dedicate your life to doing it, but it's always an aha moment on a gig or in a practice session, you know, something you run across that you uncover like you never knew it.
Always something you've never done before or heard before. I'm experiencing some of that myself tonight. This is an education every week for me.
You know, that's what you know. All you have to do is experience a few of those moments, and then you're ready for the next one. You know, it keeps you going. That keeps the fires going.
Well, one of the questions that I get quite a lot is, well, who's your favorite bass player? It's like, that's not a question I can answer.
Right.
And I have many, and I'm sure you do too, drum heroes, but I call them bass heroes. And I like them all for various reasons, and they're all different reasons. It's, you know, like a thumbprint, everybody's got a different musical signature. And so I find things to love and appreciate about a lot of great bass players, electric players and upright players. But as a bass player who improvises, I don't rely that much to in listening to other bass players. My focus for a while has been learning melodies to songs, many of which I've known for years and years, but didn't know the melody. You go back and learn the melody, and you learn how to tell the story a little better. But that has been a focus of mine, and you know, it's been said I'm a lyrical bass player, and I don't know so much about that. But one thing that I do know is a lot of what I play on the bass, they say that the great ones, the good ones borrow, the great ones steal. And a lot of the things that I adapt to the bass are licks from singers and horn players rather than other bass players, just so I can say I didn't take that from another bass player and use it. I'm drawing on another instrumentalist or a vocalist, and mostly vocalists.
That is fascinating. I mean, as a singer myself, I'm with you. I don't really have any favorite singers. I don't think I've ever heard an instrumentalist at all, let alone a bass player, say that they are borrowing from singers. As a singer, another great lesson from my mother was she would have me singing the violin line or the bass line or the trumpet line so that I could learn from y'all how to create music.
Well, a blues lick that I play rather often, I actually stole from Sammy Davis Jr.'s version of the Candyman. He has some little blues inflections that he uses when he sings that song, and I adapted them to the bass. So I'll hear, you'll hear me play that. You wouldn't know it, make that connection, but
Man,
it's,
Tracy,
something I borrowed.
learning something live in front of all of y'all right now. I can't believe that. Now, one of the major topics along this virtual jazz journey has been improvisation. It's a big part of jazz. Mr. Kevin, I'll turn to you. In playing together with these two men or any group that you're in, how does the drummer improvise his solo?
We actually have to know the melody of those tunes as well, because I mean, sometimes when we articulate a piece of the melody, it's almost like sometimes raising a buoy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of aside from our basic responsibility, keep time.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else is gravy, as they say. But a lot of times, especially when somebody is taking a solo, you can see them get comfort out of me knowing where they are.
Yes.
So it's, again, that's why
It's called support.
perfect. Yeah, so it's like raising a buoy, man, to just let you know, hey, I'm listening. And that's the premise of a lot of my playing is a lot of listening. I try to listen to cats and respond. So.
Well, the whole idea of listening, to what Kevin's doing and what Joe's doing, for me, that's part of what drives me in music. I want this musical conversation to be happening. And it doesn't happen unless everybody is listening and somehow responding a little bit to what they're hearing, reacting. It makes it different every night. And it also is a core element of improvisation in jazz sense.
I love that, musical conversation. That's exactly what I think we've seen from you and we're going to continue to see. You talked a lot before you played about how you needed to see one another. What do those visual cues give you as you play together?
Well, it's all about eye contact, because it
He's
is
rolling his eyes, going, oh, God.
it's improvisational music, and we make as improvising musicians, we make thousands of split-second decisions, and they impact each other. So on the more complicated music, there's just an awful lot of eye contact. So we're either reading it or we're knowing it from heart, but there's still a lot of eye contact so that we all know where we are and what we're about to do.
That's why before we set up, I was moving forward and asking Kevin to move a little bit because I wanted to see around.
Yeah.
The bass was in the middle and I wanted to see around,
And also here,
Believe
you
it or
do some
not,
listening with your eyes.
these actually hinder the musical conversation because it's not only eyes, but it's inflections.
Right.
Well, it hides your expressions, and a lot of times jazz musicians are conversing between
Absolutely.
choruses and things,
Absolutely.
and it's harder to do when your face is covered up because you can't read lips. So
I mean, I'm a singer. This thing is really in my way. Shifting focus a little bit, this is the first time, certainly on this program, and I think in my tenure in performing arts at the museum that I've really been able to settle into some really strong bossa nova. What is bossa nova? What can you tell my audience about what this is?
Well, it's definitely a South American rhythm that's relatively simple. You kind of emphasize the 1, 3, and 4 in a 4-beat measure rhythmically, but to me the beauty of the bossa nova is the harmonic complexity of it. That's what I listen to, and the chord voicings and all from South American, and we specifically are involved. We play bossa nova, but I think our affinity is for a very narrow niche of the music, and we call it Brazilian jazz. So the Brazilians borrowed some of what the North American jazz musicians were doing and applied it to their music, and I have a real attraction to that because I like jazz, but I also love Brazilian music, and being able to play this, what we call Brazilian jazz, to me is a perfect marriage of those two art forms.
Certainly was a folk music of Brazil, and was performed in the streets, and the guitar was the main was the main harmonic instrument, and of course there was all kinds of rhythmic, people had constructed different rhythmic devices to put rhythms in and so forth. And actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that acoustic bass is a fairly new invention in bossa nova when it came to this country with jazz and so forth. Because in the streets down there was no really acoustic basses.
Right.
But the guitar would comp and play a bass line, an alternating bass line on the lower strings. And that was part of the bossa nova comping that they would do. And the bass lines have picked that up. The jazz bass players in this country, when Antonio Carlos Jobim and João Donato and João Gilberto and Stan Getz introduced, bossa nova back in the 60s and had bass players. The bass players were listening to what the guitar players were doing down in Brazil, and that evolved.
Well, and interestingly enough, one of the artists who brought a lot of the bossa nova to North America was actually Charlie Bird, the guitarist Charlie Bird, and he had a
in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, he
Right.
had a relationship with Stan Getz and some of the early guys that brought bossa nova north of the equator. And Charlie actually spent probably a lot of time playing around Richmond back in the days. So
Right.
I've had a love affair with the bossa nova since I was a kid playing what we used to call casuals. Just club gigs where folks would dance at restaurants and such, and we would play bossa novas. And we played the common bossa novas, of course, Girl from Ipanema,
Yeah.
and Quiet Nights, which was a
Yeah.
song we played tonight, and a few other common tunes. But my taste has gotten a lot more sophisticated since those days, and I've learned about a lot of other Brazilian composers and performers. And
Well, the other thing that we found out when we started digging into this was that those tunes that Jobim wrote, Girl from Ipanema and so forth, and the ones that we all know and the people hear and such, that's the tip of the iceberg. He had a catalog that was thousands of songs deep, and then when you dug deep into his catalog, a lot of those melodies, people recognized them, but couldn't tell you the tune. But you dug even further, and they became more challenging tunes and complex, but still had that rhythm, that bossa nova or samba or choro rhythm that he did, and then we started looking at the other musicians that were in his his peer group and such, and started Baden Powell and Louis Bonfa and those guys. There's just so much there. There's so much music there. It's such a lovely, intimate music that can challenge the musician, but it's because it's harmonic enough, but it also takes away the listener because it's melodic and it's sensual and it's lovely music.
it's been called the world's most sensuous music, and I tend to believe that with bossa nova. And I try to bring that passion to my instrument when I pick it up to play these songs.
Right. I think we're feeling all of that tonight. Now, before we get you back behind your instruments tonight, gentlemen, you're playing certainly bossa nova tunes, but also standards that you're playing in a bossa nova style. You've talked tonight about harmonic complexity. Is that all it takes to take something like Green Sleeves and put a little bossa nova spin on it?
Well, Greensleeves is actually a waltz. We played it tonight as a jazz waltz, but that has some elements of bossa nova in that there's some vamps in between.
Syncopations.
And syncopations, and so it does have that kind of a twist to it.
I think that's where I'm
We
trying.
played Irving Berlin's White Christmas as a bossa nova, and you don't hear that every day, but a lot of standards can be played as a bossa nova.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, that's right. The rhythms and the bossa nova comping and so forth can be applied to a lot of the Great American Songbook. And if you look at some of the early albums in this country that Jobim did, like the very famous one he did with Frank Sinatra, it was that first album, they played a lot of standards, but in a bossa nova way, because that's what made Jobim comfortable, or what he was bringing to it, and Frank Sinatra was
I
singing.
think I Concentrate on You was one of those tunes, and is that Cole Porter?
Cole Porter, yeah.
Cole Porter wrote I Concentrate on You, and they did it with a bossa feel.
I mean, you dance all night to it. The rhythm is definitely there, and I think that's really what, I don't know, bossa nova makes me feel, like that rhythm it's almost driving me into the song itself. Well, gentlemen, I hate to chat all night long when there's so much more music to hear and so much bossa nova to learn. Do you mind giving us a few more tunes?
Absolutely.
All right, guys, thank you so much.
I thought we were going out, but we were transitioning.
Well, they call it jazz.
The first couple of tunes, we did a thing written by a famous Brazilian composer. His name is Louis Bonfa. That was called Samba de Orfeu from the movie Black Orpheus. It was very famous, I guess, dating back to the 60s, 70s time frame. A lot of good music from that. And then we did a jazz standard written by Herb Brown. It's called You Stepped Out of a Dream. Right now we're going to continue with another Christmas holiday favorite here. Okay, White Christmas, Bossa style. Of course, that was written by the great American composer Irving Berlin. We're going to continue with a little Miles Davis for you. This is one you jazz buffs would recognize. It's in a slightly different time signature from normal. Okay, we'd like to continue on now. This is a song by a Brazilian composer who's a little bit lesser known in the United States. His name is João Donato. This is a song titled Minha Saudade, My Sadness.
You at home, here you are. We have come to the end of the year. We made it. With warmth and with tenderness, we offer you this gift. For me, it's Merry Christmas. And so from my heart to yours, I hope these next few days are nothing but merry and bright. Thank you, gentlemen, for the gift tonight. Thank you at home for loving with us, listening to us, and learning from us. Thank you, Richmond Jazz Society, Dominion Energy, VMFA. I'm Robert Fennard from the Leslie Cheek Theater at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. Good night.